Hey everyone, today I'm going to share a personal story about a unique experience I had when I was in high school. A time when I was helped by a figure who seemed like an angel. Curious? Stay tuned. The story begins during the rainy season. At that time, I was taking my term exams at school. Before I left, I checked our group chat and noticed that many of my friends couldn't get in because of the floods. My area is prone to flooding, and my school was near a flood-prone area. Luckily, our school wasn't directly affected and my house was also in a safe zone. So I decided to go to school. When I walked into the classroom, it looked pretty empty. There were one or two students, but most of the seats were empty and only a few teachers were there. The teachers who were there noticed that we had already arrived and seemed to feel sorry for us. So they decided to give us the test even though the class was far from full. After the test, my friends started to leave one by one. As far as I remember, there were only 3 people left in the classroom, and the teachers also started to leave one by one. Eventually, I was the only one left. The last teacher to leave asked me, "Giovanni, how are you going to get home? Is someone coming to pick you up?" I replied, "Oh, it's all right, sir. I have a driver who will pick me up later, so don't worry." Hearing this, the teacher who gave me the test finally went home. Eventually, all my friends and teachers had left, leaving me alone in the classroom. I decided to call my driver. "Hello, sir. Where are you now? I really need to get home because I heard that the flood is spreading to several areas, and there are reports that the school may be flooded soon. Could you please hurry?" My driver replied, "Just a minute. I'll pick up your little sibling. Here's a bit of background, guys. I have a younger sibling who goes to a different school to mine, so my driver has to pick up my sibling first because they're still young. Also, with all this flooding, it's only right to prioritize them because they might need more help, whereas I'm older and can manage a bit better." "Oh, okay then. I'll wait here. Just don't be too long, please," I said. My driver assured me that he would come right after picking up my sibling. Here's a bit of background, guys. I have a younger sibling who goes to a different school to mine, so my driver has to pick up my sibling first because they're still young. Also, with all this flooding, it's only right to prioritize them because they might need more help, whereas I'm older and can manage a bit better. "Oh, okay then. I'll wait here. Just don't be too long, please," I said. My driver assured me that he would come right after picking up my sibling. That was my first conversation with my driver. Suddenly, the headmaster appeared. I was surprised because all the teachers had gone home and the staff room was dark. I figured the headmaster's office must be separate, so maybe he hadn't left yet. "Oh, you're still here? You haven't left yet?" he asked. I replied, "Not yet, sir. I'm still waiting for my car." He then offered, "Well, do you want to go home with me?" I was a bit unsure. I mean, sure, it's nice of him to offer, but he's the headmaster, and I felt a bit awkward asking for a lift. Still, I thought, maybe I should accept the help. It's probably okay. However, I declined the headmaster's offer to go home together. While I waited, I spent about half an hour hoping for an answer from my driver, but he still hadn't arrived. While I was waiting, something disturbing happened. I was disturbed by the ghost of a kuntilanak in the classroom. She moved a chair and tried to scare me, but luckily I was used to this sort of thing, so I managed to stay calm. While I was checking my phone, I heard a noise to my left. When I looked over, she was laughing with a male companion. They started making noise, trying to tease me. Finally, I shouted, "Please don't bother me here. I'm really stressed. I can't go home because of the flood. Please just leave me alone." Despite my plea, she didn't seem frightened and got even more upset and continued to bother me. Thankfully, they finally went outside and left me alone. I continued to wait for a reply from my driver, but as there was still no reply, I decided to call him again. "Hello, where are you now?" My driver explained that he was still stuck in traffic as the flooding in the area had become quite severe. "Fine, I'll just wait here," I replied. I waited patiently, and not long after, the headmaster returned and asked, "Hey, are you still here?" "Yes, sir. I haven't left yet because I'm waiting for my driver. But don't worry, he'll pick me up." "I just wanted to stay in this classroom for a while because it's dark outside and I feel uncomfortable," I explained. "Okay, but I'll be going home soon," the headmaster said. I continued to wait for almost an hour, and as time went on, I started to feel anxious and panicked. Finally, I tried to call my driver for the third time, but he didn't answer. Looking through the window, I saw that the security guard who usually watches over the area was nowhere to be found. To make matters worse, I didn't see any cars around. It seemed everyone had left and there was no one to keep an eye on the place. I felt a surge of fear, especially as the headmaster had already gone home. In that moment of worry, I prayed to God, "Dear God, please show me a way to get home." After I had finished my prayer, the headmaster approached me and said, "You must come with me. I can't leave you like this. You have to go home with me." At that moment, I felt completely helpless and reluctant to go with him, feeling a deep sense of unease. We walked out of the classroom together. The school was dark and eerily quiet, with a few mischievous ghosts lingering around. Strangely, as I walked alongside the headmaster, I noticed something strange about him. He seemed very upright, authoritative, and charismatic as he accompanied me. I thought maybe he was just acting that way because of the tense situation, so I didn't think too much about it. Eventually, we made it to the ground floor. In the lobby, I saw a red car from the 1990s parked in the middle of the courtyard. It was the only vehicle there, and I wondered how it had ended up in such a place. Curious, I walked over to it with the headmaster. As we got closer, I noticed that the car looked a bit strange. Normally, you'd expect to find personal items like favorite tapes or some decorations inside, but this car was completely empty. No tapes, no bottles, nothing. It felt like a taxi. If you've ever seen a taxi, you know they're usually bare. Just leather seats and that's it. This car was exactly the same. The headmaster started to drive through the flood and remained silent the whole way, which made me curious. To break the silence, I asked, "Sir, are you married?" It was the first question that came to mind, as I'm not very good at small talk. He simply replied, "Yes." I followed up with, "Do you have children?" He replied that he did, but when I asked how many, he fell silent for a moment and didn't answer. The atmosphere became quiet again, as if nothing had happened. As we approached an intersection, I realized that since the headmaster had never been to my house before, he probably didn't know where to go. So I said, "Sir, just go straight." He replied, "Yes, I know." At that point, I felt something was wrong, but I pushed it aside. Eventually, we got to my house and I said to him, "You can drop me off here. There's no need to go any further. I really appreciate you helping me." He insisted, "No, I have to take you home." So he drove me all the way to my house, but he didn't say a word. When I got out, I thanked him and said, "Thank you, sir." Here's the funny part. When I said thank you, he suddenly asked, "So when do we start school again?" I was confused because as the headmaster, he should know. I replied, "Sorry, sir, I don't know when we start again either." "Oh, okay then," he said. In the end, I arrived home safely, while my younger sibling, who had been picked up by the driver, still hadn't returned. I called my driver for the fourth time and said, "Hello, sir. How's everything over there? Have my siblings made it to the car yet?" "Yes, they're here, but the water's really high. The traffic is terrible. It's almost impossible to get through," my driver replied. "Where are you now?" I asked. "I'm still at school. I'm sorry, but I can't pick you up," he said. I reassured him. "It's all right, sir. I've already made it home safely." My driver sounded shocked and insisted that there was no way I could have got home so quickly with the road so congested. The traffic was indeed terrible because of the floods, but I didn't think it was too bad for me. I thought everything felt normal while I was driving, so I didn't worry too much about it. The next day, after the tide had receded and I had returned to school, I met my headmaster in the playground. I wanted to thank him again, so I looked him in the eye. But something was strange. His eyes were almost blank, as if he didn't recognize anything that had happened, and he didn't ask me a single question. Normally, he would at least ask how I was doing, but he seemed completely different, even though he looked the same. Just then, some other students came up behind us and the headmaster waved at them. I couldn't help but think back to the previous day when he had walked so confidently beside me. His posture was solid, although he was a little on the heavier side. I thought maybe he was just being reserved in front of the students. I thought that when we were alone again, he might open up and talk to me. I ran into him again later when the school was quieter because classes were in session. I went to the toilet and saw him passing by, but he didn't acknowledge me. I looked back and wondered if he had forgotten our encounter. It seemed odd that he didn't even ask me how I was after walking me home the day before. I began to wonder if it was even the same person. Years passed and I buried my curiosity about this incident until I met up with my two friends, Wizzy and Alan. As we chatted, I told them this mysterious story. Suddenly, Wizzy felt a strange energy in the air. An unknown white being appeared. Wizzy focused on the energy and it began to identify itself as an angel. Wizzy asked the angel, "Were you responsible for the incident when Giovanni was at school?" The angel replied, "Yes, I was actually the principal." I was completely taken aback. I couldn't find the words to express my shock and immediately thanked the angel for helping me. Wizzy then asked, "Oh, angel, what is your name?" The angel replied, "You can call me Charles." And that brings us to the end of the story. By the way, I realized that I hadn't mentioned my director's real name yet. It's Andrianis. It's not his real name, but it does bear a resemblance to his true identity. That's the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Goodbye.